the OpenAIRE Graph. We are recording this meeting, so we remind you to have your microphone muted while we have the presentation, and at the end of the presentation there will be time for questions. You can decide if you want to open or not your camera, keeping in mind that this is recorded, and in case you don't feel comfortable with being recorded while you're posing a question, you just let us know with a direct message, and we will edit out your intervention before publishing the video. As always, I remind you that we have a collaborative document where we take notes. I will share it in the chat in a minute, and all the material from this community call as well as from the previous ones is available on our website, on the OpenAIRE Graph website. And that's it for the starting messages. And I'm very happy to welcome Paolo Manghi, OpenAIRE's Chief Technical Officer, and we can say the father of the OpenAIRE Graph. This month we want to talk about the graph, about the role of the graph in the context of EOSC, the European Open Science Cloud, especially in view of the recent developments of this initiative. You know that EOSC is a major initiative of the European Commission that aims to develop an infrastructure that provides users with services that help them adopting open science practices. And this year, particularly this recent month, this initiative has seen a major step forward with the launch of the EOSC EU Node. And Paolo and OpenAIRE have been in the forefront, at the forefront for this major achievement. So today we'll hear from Paolo about these updates and learn what it means for graph users and for the EOSC community, that the graph is a source and an authoritative source for the EOSC EU Node. Thank you, Paolo, for being with us. The floor is yours.
Can you hear me? Yes, let me share my slides. Where is it? Well, let me open it up first. Okay. No. Come on. I got too many screens, so apologies. Microsoft PowerPoint. Can you see it now?
We can see the PowerPoint, and no, this is the view. This is the presenter view.
Yes, switch. I can switch. Where is it? Here, swap displays. Okay, that should be it. Okay.
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so let's say this is an interactive chat. Okay, so you can interrupt me with a question maybe on the chat if you want a clarification, because there's so many things that should be discussed and touched upon to describe the current scenario in Europe and how the OpenAIRE Graph fits in there. So I will give a few things for granted with respect to the OpenAIRE, AMKE, and services and so on. So I'd like to focus immediately on what the OpenAIRE Graph is. So I'm sure you've heard about it. So the idea here is to build what we call an SKG, so a scholarly communication graph, that brings together information and metadata about research-related entities from several authoritative data sources worldwide. Okay, so this is the view of the data model of the graph. For those who know a little less, we have the research products in the middle, which are classified in publications, data, software, and other research products. These products are related with each other via semantic relationships. So, for example, we know if it's a citation, we know if it's a supplemented by, which means they come together, right? So as a package, we know if it's just a related thing or a part of thing. So we're following the data site vocabulary on that respect. Then for each research product, we know who are the authors, we know who are the organizations of the authors, and we also care a lot about the provenance. So we know where every single piece of information comes from. So we track so-called provenance for each data source from which we collect data. We track with a persistent identifier what the data source is, where the record comes from, and so on. We also have an administrative side in a serif kind of or CRIS system kind of style. So we know when it's possible to know, of course, the project that has funded, so the grants that have funded a research product, the relative streams and funders. Sometimes the connection is straight to the funder where grants are not made available. And of course, we know also which is the relationship between organizations and projects. So this requires a lot of work in collecting the data. We also enrich it with several tools that we have, and we provide indicators with it. So indicators like citations, downloads and views and so on. So you understand from this view how many things you could do by connecting these objects in terms of statistics, monitoring, assessment, and also discovery, right? So you find a publication, you can navigate to the related data set, you can navigate to the software, and vice versa. You can find out all sorts of information. Now, we use persistent identifiers, so we use all of them. We are not being racist at all with respect to, at least to persistent identifiers. We collect everything. Currently, we have DOI, archive, PubMed, handles for publications, DOI accession numbers for research data, blah, blah. We'll get into the details. But we consider all of them relevant. So this is very important. Okay, so we're not just focused on a subpart of the potential research outcomes, but we care about everything. Provision chain. Briefly, just to tell you how these things work. On the left side, you have all the data sources or representations of the data sources that we are collecting together with Provide. Provide is a service that we provide. Provide is basically the gateway for data source providers like repository managers, librarians, people who are managing their data sources to bring their data, their metadata and files in some cases to the OpenAIRE infrastructure. So they can register, they can validate the metadata against the guidelines that we have defined with the communities. So the OpenAIRE interoperability guidelines, which by the way are now adopted by the EOSC. And they can bring in their metadata. This is the class of sources that we called compliant data sources. So they stick to the OpenAIRE guidelines and they're brought in. And this is very typical for some data repositories, institutional repositories at the national level especially, okay? So we have a battery of more than 1,500 different repositories that are bringing information and aggregators at the national level, at the continental level, and so on. And of course, journals, all sorts of stuff. Then we have what we call the instrumental data sources, basically the registries out there, or some very specific and dedicated data sources that we care about. Open Citations is one of them. We have several funder databases. We have people working in the research domain, providing us with sustainable development goals in fields of science. We have several collaborations in the Netherlands, in Greece, and so on. And then, of course, we have all the registries. Crossref, ORCID, DataCite, EMBO. So all those that are providing content together with authoritative persistent identifiers and metadata that are relevant for science. These are key data sources. Of course, they must be. When we aggregate this data, and you understand this is a major job, so we collect 500 million different records and something like 3 billion links between them. Okay, we build this aggregation. The first thing that we do is to enrich it further. So since we also collect the full text from many of these data sources, we have bilateral agreements with publishers, with repositories, and so on. We are reaching now 60 million PDFs roughly. We apply full text mining, AI to enrich the graph. So the graph becomes richer with information that was completely missing from the original metadata, or also links between such objects. So for example, we find links between publications and software, publication and data, many links between publications and projects at the level of the grants. Okay, so you have a number of examples here. Once this is done, the first package of the graph is ready with the data all harmonized and enriched with a duplicate. This is an important process, and it follows our policy for the duplication. The duplication changes across different graphs similar to ours based on the perception and the intended use of the data. In OpenAIRE, for example, because of the feedbacks from the funders mainly, we count the preprint as an object that is equivalent to the published version, because it has to be measured as one research effort. We cannot count it twice. Okay, of course, this would be quite unusual in terms of impact. And in the duplicating the objects, so bringing them together, we also merging the relationships they have. This is another important thing. So if one object is pointing to a project and the other object is not, once they're merged together, of course, they will together point to the original project. And if the same link is provided on both sides, we duplicate also the link. So we merge the links. And in this process, and again, this is very important, we keep track of provenance. So for relationships, for records, we know which are the data sources that originally provided these links, or which is the algorithm that we used that generated such links. I'm mentioning this because the duplication of relationships is not a common thing. So not all products similar to ours do it. Enrichment by inference, it's another important process. I won't go into the detail of this, but exploiting the relationship that we have between the objects of the graph, we do other very nice things. So we migrate information from one node to another. Example, simple, I have a publication supplemented by a data set, which means that they come together in terms of research effort. Then we can shift from the object, from the publication to the data source, to the data set, for example, the project. So if the publication was funded by the project, then the data set is, or the ORCID identifiers. So if I have ORCID identifier at the level of publications, which is much more common than at the level of the data set metadata, then supplemented by can be used to verify the equivalence of the name, and the name matching somehow justifies the migration of the ORCID ID to the dataset. So many actions of this kind allow us to enrich the graph with a very high level of confidence and approximation. Then we finalize it and we throw it to the world. Okay, we give it to the world through APIs, through open dumps, and so on. People can take it and use it. Okay, this is a sketch of all the possible data sources that we are collecting from. So where are we different? We are different from other initiatives from many point of views. Of course, we have the usual suspects. So we have the Crossref, UK PubMed, Archive, all these major data sources for publication, traditional research publications. Then where we are kind of moving differently is in the fact that we are targeting the communities. So we are collecting research data, metadata from the specific repositories of the different communities. So we target research infrastructures, we target clusters, and we bring in software information straight from several data sources, as you can see on the top left side. And we work closely with the publishers. We work closely with the publishers, especially the open access publishers, in order to have a full coverage of what is out there. And this is increasing, so over time. We are working a lot in this sense with, in that direction, with the platforms developers. We, for example, have modules that make repositories compliant with OpenAIRE as part of the DSpace, as part of the ePrints platforms projects. So this simplifies the life of those who are using those systems to integrate with our system. We really care about the repositories and the libraries, because we believe these are the places where information can be preserved in an open access format and forever. So we price a lot these kind of efforts, and we try to support them in these technical efforts of integration. This is why we provided the validation services and instructions and documentations, and we provide front help desk and front office to support this process. Now, this is the graph. What can we say about EOSC and open science and how the graph fits with this universe? Now, this is very hard. So it's like I have it clear in my mind, but it's really hard to explain. So what is the EOSC? Well, this is the blah, blah part, okay? So, which is very important because it's the driving force behind the whole initiative of the EOSC and the reason why the Commission is investing so much. First of all, I have to say applause to the European Commission, okay? Because the European Commission is really pioneering open access, open science, open data, and is doing this for the world, okay? Then the others somehow follow up. In Europe, we tend to be, that's my perception, slower in many ways, because we all want to come to an agreement first, okay? But then when we do it, we build highways, okay? And the highways are publicly funded. And this is something that we underestimate too much. Compared to other continents where, for example, competition is the rule, and then sustainability is an issue of, if it works, then you should find money to make it run, okay? In the strategy of the Commission, therefore, the EOSC comes as a sort of, okay, we have, if you think about it, if you think of the whole picture, we have the horizontal infrastructures like GÉANT, EGI, OpenAIRE, EU Node, PRAISE, HPC, whatever. So, how was it called? Well, it doesn't matter. Anyway, the horizontal, let's say, support to the scientific community. Then you have the vertical ones, which are the research infrastructures. And there already we observe some sort of overlap. So some research infrastructures take advantage of the horizontal part in full or partly, some less, some don't. Okay, so they're somehow rebuilding this layering. Then on top of this, you have the clusters, because the Commission again said, okay, some research infrastructures, there's more than 120, I think, I don't know how many they are, should work together because they are very close in science. So they built these clusters. And now at the end of the story, and at the end of this pyramid, it's not really a pyramid. In fact, I think it's pretty square in the way it's formatted. You have the EOSC on top. So the EOSC is trying to connect the dots where you don't see the dots, okay? So really looking outside of your borders in one way. So the idea is to make it possible to see opportunities where they were not visible before. And of course, this is a bet. And so you cannot bridge all possible communities in all possible ways, okay? That's very bilateral as an approach, but you can reach somehow a mid-level where you can spot at least what's on the other side of the wall, okay? And that's very important. And on the other hand, is also making sure with this notion of federation that all these points that I mentioned, be them horizontal or vertical, can play a role. So they can remain themselves, they can have their own dignity and decide which walls should be bridged, which walls should not be bridged, and provide opportunities of bridging, okay? So this is roughly what is going on. So the EOSC will be a unique selling point, really, in terms of language, because being part of the EOSC means for a node, for a cluster, for a research infrastructure, for any infrastructure, to be part of a universe where some communication is possible, be it very lightweight or deep integration. It's up to you to decide, okay? And it will be and correspond to a change of mindset. So what can I exploit from other nodes? What can I share? What can I make open? Where can I make science more open? And how can I take advantage of somebody else's efforts, for example? So I'm a node and I need to find out how to, I don't know, preserve better my data. And I find out that there is a node that does that. Building the connection becomes easier in a federation because I know what others are doing, okay? So sharing information about what we are all doing. So openness is, as this slide is saying, a success factor. And it's not just the free and the point of views that we said, it's mentioned here in red. It's also the idea of transparency. So knowing what others are doing. So access to results, software, protocols, services, tools should be easier, following the same AAI, for example, following the same descriptions of such objects so that I can really find them across the borders and so on. So open science, of course, is a strategic priority, as we said. And another outcome that I think is crucial from the EOSC is that we tend to think that all communities are served by some technologies that are grouped under a hub that is called research infrastructure, cluster, and so on. This is not really the case. So in many cases, we have long tail of science. So communities that are working across these research infrastructures that today, whose researchers today don't really find a place, don't really find a dedicated scope, let's say. So how can the EOS contribute to all this? So the EOS can, in many ways, by providing a layer, an abstraction that allows to group these services, these tools, these resources in general, in a sort of virtual space. So the entry point to multiple nodes, for example, that is provided today by the EOSC EU Node allows this kind of view. So I can, as a scientist with no home, find out the resources that I need in one place. This is extremely important. Okay. How can OpenAIRE contribute to this? Well, there's a lot of things that we can do for the long tail of science. We have general purpose services like Zenodo, Argos. Amnesia was part of our tooling. It's a tool for the sensitive data and anonymization of data that is sensitive. We do training, and we implement many policies at the level of fairness. Okay, but most importantly, the OpenAIRE Resource Graph. Okay, so the OpenAIRE Resource Graph is a way to observe across communities what these communities are producing, and also a way to group these resources. In this case, these are research products according to some common intention. Could be a thematic, could be a geographical jurisdiction. For example, we do it for ministries. We could do it for continents. We are actually doing it also for them, and so on. So it's a way to look, and a tool to look at the whole scientific production from a different perspective. Scientific communication provides a common language for all stakeholders to buy in open science practices. Why? Because we have defined the guidelines, we have a common view of looking at this universe. Of course, this means in many cases for some thematic nodes to lose some information because, as I was mentioning before, we are describing the world from a perspective that is cross-disciplinary. So we cannot have information about atmospheric data in the graph. It wouldn't make sense because it's not the level where you can query about these things. That for these kind of services, you have to dig into the specific research community. But if you want to find the connections between these objects when these exist, for example, from your published atmospheric data to a publication that is in turn connected to a paper that is in turn connected to another data set, the OpenAIRE Graph is the place where you can find this, okay? You will not find it at the local level. So we have services like Connect, for example, that allow the slicing of the graph with respect to the different criteria and perspective that I mentioned before. So thematic perspectives, in many cases, country perspective is one that we are serving now, for example, to Ireland, to the Netherlands, and so on. So we offer portals that offer access to the whole production at the national level. Now, here is a nice sketch of the EOS Federation. Okay, so we left the blah blah part on the side, and now I can dig into what the EOSC EU Node is all about. Okay, so federation. Federation, it's a generic term. We know it very well from I don't know, government organizations. It's not very different here. It's you should think of an EOS node not as a technology. Okay, start thinking of it as a legal scope. First of all, it's a liable place. It's a place liable for something. Okay, for example, you need to become a node. You need a legal entity. So you need somebody responsible for the organization of the EOSC EU Node. An EOSC EU Node can define policies, must implement policies, must control what they do, okay? This is very common for research infrastructure. So many research infrastructure already have that, okay? They were born for that. the fact that you call them a node doesn't change much from that perspective because they're fully organized to do so. So an infrastructure is by definition a node because it's an organization with a name, with a scope that is making sure that scientists can work within a uniform understanding of what science is about. It also instructs on the workflows, how science should be conducted, which are the services that can be used, and so on, right? Which are the data sets, which are the data sources that deliver those data sets, where you're supposed to publish them, right? So if you find a protein in the life science universe, you know where to go because your infrastructure tells you so, okay? So a node is that thing, okay? So when you think of a node, don't think of a set of services running on one machine. This is too naive. Services can run on multiple nodes. They can be operated by different organizations, which are all parts of the same EOSC node. Okay. De facto, it's intended that a service can be part of different nodes. In fact, okay. So depending on how you want to sell it, or how you want to deliver it, or how you want to customize it, it can be part of different nodes. So it's not mutually exclusive. It's not a choice that confines you in one place. The trend for thematic infrastructures is to operate like this. Okay? But for example, Argos, that is a service that we provide in OpenAIRE, could be also part of different nodes if they want to run a local instance, if they want to use our instance for specific issues. Why? Because scientists through that node will see it and will address to the service as a service that was picked by the community, by the node to offer a certain function. Okay, so it can be, this can be the case. A different notion is that of a national node. National nodes are new, and they say that is something that a commission would like to have. Okay, it's really undefined. Now there's the whole process of candidate nodes and selection of those nodes that is ongoing. And it was really interesting to participate because I'm being part of the EOSC EU Node provider as Paolo. I was invited to follow all the interviews. They were extremely interesting because we could see how at the national level they were kind of organizing in the same way their offer to become part of the build up phase of the EOSC. Okay. And the simple idea is that what you do at the national level is not thematic. It's horizontal. So you offer services such as computing, storage to your scientists. You offer tables where you discuss policies. You offer data sources like repositories, archives. You institutional level. You offer catalogs of your resources because you want people to know what's going on. Research assessment, monitoring. What you normally do if you think with a mindset of, I don't know, Ministry of Education, for example. Okay, so what are your investments? It's really nice to observe how the thematic and national node perspectives can be combined, because on the thematic level, you offer thematic services and there's always a lack of resources, right? You need to produce these resources, find the budget for computing, for storage, for this kind of stuff. At the national level, instead, is where you provide such resources in the hopes that somebody will use them. In fact, in many nations, in many countries in Europe, this is already the case. In Italy, for example, we have a very strong network of computing resources that is being built, that is there and is built now. And it offers resources to the thematic nodes of research infrastructures. Research infrastructures, for those who don't know, often have national connections and national nodes. And in that case, at the country level, some resources are offered to such nodes to operate and to work for their services. So it's nice to see how this combination somehow already happens and takes place. With this notion of the EOS Federation on top, this will be much easier. Okay, frameworks will be, interoperability frameworks will be not necessarily defined, but picked maybe from what already exists in terms of standards and protocols. But it would be more about policies on how to make this exchange of resources possible. Okay. So the EOSC EU Node is the first node that has been built by the EOS Federation, where we are, I say we, because OpenAIRE is part of this, we're trying to address some of these horizontal services. The EOSQ node, in fact, is at the top of the pyramid, but somehow looks like the horizontal infrastructure below. Would like to bring them together. Would like to merge the infrastructures level together and offer a place where national nodes, for example, could provide the resources for others to use. Okay, so this is the generic intended structure of an EOSC node. Okay, so you have, now we are getting more technical, so some of you may get bored. I see there is one. Okay, no, that's Stefania document. This wasn't a question. An EOS node, and that's a technical perspective, has a number of services. We call them community services. So this is actually the set of services provided, operated by the EOS node or by organizations on behalf of the EOS node, for which the EOS node is liable. It's actually the reason why the EOS node exists. Okay, so the users of the EOS node will actually come to the community services because they want to use it. Okay, then the EOS node can offer federating capabilities. Federating capabilities are, how can I say it in simple words, are the offer, let's say the functionality offered by a node to federate other services which may belong to other nodes. The simplest examples that I can think of is a federated search. Okay, so in the community services, you have a search service that allows you to write queries and get back answers from 3-4 different data sources. Okay, how can these data sources contribute to this search? They do it through the federating capabilities of the node. So the node must define the protocols, the APIs, say the rules of participation to become part of one of these community services offered by the node. Okay, this is what happens also in the EOSQ node. So the EOSQ node offers a catalog of all possible resources, which is let's say taken from OpenAIRE, and OpenAIRE defines the rules of participation. The rules of participation are the OpenAIRE guidelines, which include many different formats, many different protocols. They can be extended for that, but they establish the rules out of which, and the community defined rules, not OpenAIRE defined, to be clear, by which data sources can become part of the OpenAIRE graph and therefore of the EOSC catalog. Okay, the EOS catalog of resources. So that's an example. Core services, don't care about this. It's very technical and nothing of interest. Oh. Okay, this is an example of a network of EOS nodes. The EOSQ node is in the middle. It offers a number of federating capabilities because the EOSQ node wants to offer services that are based on federating capabilities. Some are here on the right, highlighted. So you have a resource catalog. So the EOSQ node wants to offer a unique and single entry point to search and find all resources in all the EOS nodes. Okay, so EOS nodes who want to participate can contribute to the EOS node by implementing the interoperability frameworks as defined by this federating capability. As I mentioned before, you can do it through the OpenAIRE graph, or you can do it through your catalogs of services, but you can feed the EOSQ node catalog to make it possible for others to find your services, your EOSQ node, etc. Then the EOSQ node offers also AAI identity management. Okay, so that's another possibility. So there's the Xi'an offered EOSC AAI federation. So nodes can, of course, adopt their own implementation of this, but they should make it possible to exchange their context, their security context through the EOSC AAI federation. That will allow their users to connect not only to the EOS node, but to the other nodes in the federation. Application workflow management. That's a special and specific application that the Commission wanted. It's a service that allows the deployment of a service. Okay, deployment of a service, for those who are not technical, means a service is something running. For example, you access the web, you find a very nice web interface. There's something behind that runs on a machine that you can use for your stuff. You can, I don't know, a data repository, or it can be a very complex service, in fact. So not just one machine, one piece of software running, but a cluster of machines, okay? So what happens is that through the EOS node, you can offer a service, but you can also, if you want, offer the software behind that service together with the recipe to deploy it on a cluster, okay? So you can access the EU node, you can find these recipes and ask the EU node to deploy them somewhere for you to use, okay? So you can have a dynamic deployment and reusable copy of a service on the machinery offered by the user. Then you have monitoring and accounting. That's, I think, another interesting idea. It comes from the EOS Future in the past. The problem is simple. Monitoring for those who are operating services is clear, but for those who don't, just imagine this. I want to know if this service is up and running. Okay, I want to know if it's working or if it's been working in the last year. So how reliable is the service, de facto, okay? Accounting is instead when you want to track the usage of the service. How many users have logged in into that service? Or how many hits this API had? Or how many requests of dynamic deployment of the service have been submitted? This gives me an understanding of the user's interest in the service, how much it is used, and the monitoring, how much it is reliable. So today, when I look at the EOS nodes, whatever they call now, infrastructures and clusters, if I want to find this information, I have to dig the web for hours, okay? Some clusters show it, some services do, some don't. There's no uniform way of looking at this data and finding this data. By federating capabilities here offered by the EOS node, EOS nodes will be able to send their information in a uniform package to a central node. So through that, I will be able to visualize in one place how the services are doing. For example, how similar services are doing. One is more reliable than the other, one is more used by the users, and so on. So transparency. Transparency for the consumers, of course, also for the funders, because it's time to invest on what is worth investing on, okay? Because that's very important for the commission, economy of scale, and many other aspects can be enabled by this possibility of observing the extent from one place. Order management is obsolete, I'm sorry, should not be there, okay? And then there's a common, I don't know why it's there, a common management system and help desk, okay? That's another very important thing, okay? So today, if I want to use a service, I have to reach that node and ask a question there, okay? With the EOSQ node in place, and this is already the case, we have many clusters, many nodes de facto that have already integrated, not clusters, research infrastructures, nodes in general. It's possible through the EOSQ node to ask questions about the service. And this help desk will forward to the local help desk and vice versa, responses will be sent back. So again, you don't have to provide your email to multiple places and connect to multiple places to connect the dots and understand how these things are working, but you have one operational place from where you can do everything in a uniform manner. And of course, that depends on the will of the individual nodes to connect to these federating capabilities. This is not an obligation. It's based on opportunity. Okay. Then you have local nodes. And as I mentioned before, the local nodes can have their own services and they can have their own federating capabilities, okay? That's very important and we should know about that. Now, a key federating capability that is offered, well, it's not yet a federating capability that is offered by EOSQ node today, is the one of computing. Okay, so if you go to the EOS node today, you register, and I invite you to do so. You can do it with your institutional account. If your institution has been regularly registered as a federation party to the EOSQ node, you will find out that you have credits as a user. Okay, so as a user, you will be able, using this credit, to access computing machinery, to access storage, to access the application workload management. So a number of services for free, up to the credit amount that you have. Okay, this means that you have chances to use machinery out there, like virtual machines again, up to a certain resource level. You can decide. Of course, there's a cap, but Frankly, they're pretty good, so you can use them. These machines today are offered by PSNC, which is an institute in Poland, who actually won the commission selection to offer these resources. In the future, in the close future, we hope, in the next years, it will be possible for others in the EOSC EU Node Federation to participate and offer the resources through the very same mechanism. Again, based on credit. So credits today are used as a way to control usage, to see how much it is used, to see what's the interest, and etc. Because an amount of resources has been already allocated. Okay, but in the future, this will become, and has the potential to become, more of a market. Okay, so that's, I think, a very important thing. So how can nations contribute? And how can they control their contributions to the federation? This could be ruled by this credit system. And it's, again, very important. That's my idea, but ideally, the commission could, in projects, give you credits for your scientists rather than give you budget to buy your own resources. So invite, basically, an economy of scale approach in terms of system administrations and so on. Okay. OpenAIRE as part of the EOSC EU Node. So what is our role here? As I mentioned, the EOSC EU Node is a machinery that provides a catalog, that provides catalogs for resources and services. So a place where you can find everything that is offered by the EOSC Federation as a resource that can be reused and connected. So our offer here is in the services that you see in this slide. So first of all, we run the EOSC knowledge graph. So for the EOSC, on behalf of the EOSC, we built this EOSC knowledge graph. The EOSC knowledge graph is a combination of sources. We take everything that is in the OpenAIRE resource graph. This was by request of the Commission. We add to it all the services that we are providing as part of the service catalog of the EOSC EU Node. We add to it the tools catalog, which is the recipes that I mentioned before. So how to, the deployment workflows for services. We add the training resources that are offered via OpenPlato, which is again an OpenAIRE service and is a managed service in the EOSC EU Node. And we build this EOSC knowledge graph. As you will notice, the top right thing is the portal that you can access today. The EOSC knowledge graph is smaller than the OpenAIRE resource graph. It is smaller because the Commission wanted to apply further restrictions on the content available through the knowledge graph. They wanted only, at the moment, content that was bearing at least one persistent identifier. So no persistent identifiers, no need, no eligible to be in the OpenAIRE graph. They wanted content that was complete to some extent in terms of information. Okay, so that would offer a certain condition of completeness with respect to the metadata. So title must be there, the date must be there, the author must be there, and we are fine with the OpenAIRE practices as well. But then there was more. So the presence of a license was important, and many other things. Now I can't recall all of them, but if you want, I can find them out. That cuts in half the graph. Okay, we were much more tolerant on the OpenAIRE resource graph. We were not taking such decisions. Actually, in the OpenAIRE resource graph, the idea is to give feedback to the users. This will happen next year on how to improve their metadata to make it, for example, eligible for monitoring. Okay. In the EOSC knowledge graph, instead, they've been much more strict in that sense. And they say in, out, that's it. Then the other thing that we offer is the OpenAIRE users count. The OpenAIRE users count is a service that we have. It's an infrastructure, first of all, because it's a sort of federation as well. So we offer federating capabilities there. It's based on the counter practice standards. We use several tools that are already available out there, but it's a software, it's a service that gathers information from repositories, archives, databases about usage, about use and downloads in the institutional repository side, mostly in the institutional repositories and across them. So every time a user on a local repository connects to the user interface and views a record or downloads a record, this becomes an event that is immediately sent to OpenAIRE. We collect this event and we group it with others. So if a publication is deposited across 20 different repositories that are part of this federation, then we group their statistics into one node. Thanks to the deduplication, this becomes one node that collects those statistics, which we provide together with citation counts and so on. That is part of the OpenAIRE resource graph, and therefore we deliver this data to the EOSC EU Node. And then, of course, we have provide. Provide is the services through which we validate. So if you want to be part of the EOSC knowledge graph, you need your data source to go through this validation process, match the guidelines condition very strictly, and of course, also match the further restrictions from the European Commission knowledge graph. Otherwise, your data may not appear in the final node. Now, in the future, we wanted to, and we are thinking of, candidate OpenAIRE as a node itself. Okay, we're not part of the first candidate node wave. We had too many things to do at the moment, and we did not candidate in the first place. But the idea here is that we already have everything it takes to be a node, as many infrastructures are, many clusters are. In fact, none of the infra has, at the moment, candidated as an EOSC EU Node. Okay, so we are just kind of waiting outside of the door because we are part of the EOSC EU Node launch and offer. But the idea is that for us, it's pretty simple to provide such a scheme because we already have a catalog. We have many services, not necessarily run by us. In fact, plenty of examples. We have not only provide user accounts as federating capabilities, but we have services like Open Citations and Zenodo that are part of our catalog. They're not run by us, but they are part of our offer as an open science scholarly workflow and communication node. Okay, so that's the idea, the proposition behind it. We define interoperability framework, we define federating capabilities already implemented by OpenAIRE Provide and by OpenAIRE User Accounts. So we have all the necessary conditions to be part of it. And our services, of course, can be also part of the EOSC EU Node offer, because as I mentioned before, a service is free to be where it should be for the users of a node to take advantage of it. Okay. So as you can see, it's a long trip, plenty of content. Many of these things can be digged in much deeper fashion. So I hope I managed to give you a general view, but I'm not sure this was the case. So happy to answer your questions if you have any.
Thank you, Paolo. That was well, a lot of content, complex, but very interesting. And we dedicated more time than usual to the presentation because for the complexity of the topic, it deserved a bit more time. And we don't have much time left, but please raise your hand or type your question in the document or in the chat as you feel more convenient. We did have a request from the registration form. That was a request to because in the registration form we ask participants if they have something that they wish to be clarified during the community call. So we had a request to expand on explain on FAIR data. So this is a basic concept that it's also behind the reason of the EOSC. Paolo, if you want to comment on that.
Okay, so first answer in short, because that will take forever. So first problem, what do you mean by FAIR data? So if it's here there's a lot of discussion. So FAIR data is used in a very generic fashion. So by data we mean everything that is not a publication, basically. So people include software in data. Okay, we don't, and the Commission doesn't. So we make a distinction between software and data. Software is code, And research data are facts organized in digital form in such a way you can process them. So they're intended for processing. So they can also be read in some cases. So they can also be offered in a way that humans can read them. But still, the reason why you're providing them is because much more likely they will be used for processing. Okay, and the same is for publications. Publication is to be read. So everything that is in textual form intended to, in a narrative form, is a publication. Okay. When you're talking about fair data, and if you're talking about research data, then we have another misunderstanding, which is often an issue in discussion. And so fairness sometimes is just interpreted as a matter of the metadata of the data. So many models of fairness are limited to the inspection of the metadata fields, checking if there is a license, if there is a DOI, if there is, and this is already a good start, I would say. So of course, metadata must be complete to ensure findability, to ensure several other things. Is the R of data instead that suffers a little if we limit ourselves to this scope. And fairness, therefore, is often placed at the lower level. So it's where the actual data used for experiments that the R is fundamental. So knowing, for the users, knowing exactly how the data was produced, the right provenance, the right legacy, the schemas, which is the machinery involved. This is what makes the R effective. Okay. Of course, this is very community specific. It's really hard to generalize on this topic. So OpenAIRE, for example, works at the level of bibliographic metadata. So the kind of fairness that we can talk about has an R that is very limited, okay? And is limited by definition, because this is the bibliographic world, is where you are evaluating, you're assessing science, you are linking objects across different domains where you're not digging in, okay? So that would be my answer. So if you are accessing the EOSC today, the EOSC resource sub, you will find research products which are final published products with the DOI. So the intention there, DOI with persistent identifiers or repository handles, whatever. But the idea there is I'm publishing something that I want to put on my CD. Okay. If you're looking for atmospheric data, okay, or you're looking for crystallography stuff or energy physics and particle physics, whatever data, low-level data, then you will not find in there. What you may find is the data source that contains it with the description of the data source. And then you access the data source. And that's where the R of fairness should be really looked after, okay? So it's beyond that. And the processes that produce that data should be fair in the very deep sense, okay? First answer. Second, CAFA. Yes, we have a
sorry, Paolo, since we
yes.
are wrapping up, I will read the 3 questions. So because I think they are in a way can be connected, so then you can answer all of them. So yes, from Tala, do you have a business model for the graph? Another question we have is if to be part of OpenAIRE, does the research infrastructure also need to be a member of EOSC? Is there a membership fee both for EOSC and OpenAIRE?
So I give you the answers quickly. Do you have a business model? Yes. To be part of OpenAIRE, you also need to be a member of EOSC? No. Is there a membership fee? Yes. Okay. Then the specific, so is yes, no, yes. Okay. The business model to use the OpenAIRE graph stands in agreements that we take with individual consumers. Okay, so it really depends. It can change depending on, for example, if you want to contribute to the graph. So with some organizations, we're exchanging data. So there's no need to do anything. Okay, the graph is open. You have open APIs, and we publish a full dump that is free every 6 months. If you want to go beyond that, of course, then we must reach an agreement. Then most of the consumers of the graph, many, I would say half, don't use the APIs, don't use the data, but use the services that we offer on top. Connect and monitor. Monitor is for research evaluation assessment. I invite you to look at the Irish monitor that we built to give you an idea. Stefania, maybe you can share the link on the chat. Then we also have Connect. Connect is for discovery practices. We offer it again. I invite you to look at the Netherlands portal as an example. Okay. Then we are offering also for the organization. So if your institute wants to have a fully fledged research assessment that involves publications, involves data, involves software, then we can offer that. Okay. Of course, the approach that we have is not Elsevier's-like. It's sustainability-like. So you will find those fees very much acceptable also for the, let's say, the poorest organization you may have, like ours. Okay, because I work also for CNR in Italy. Then, no, you don't need to be a member of the EOSC. You can be part of OpenAIRE, be part of the OpenAIRE Graph. Everything that is in the OpenAIRE Graph is connected to the European Participant Portal. This is where you can report your outcomes for projects and so on. So if you provide content through the OpenAIRE Graph, it will naturally go into the EOSC if it matches EOSC conditions, and to the Participant Portal, and to all the organizations that are using Monitor and people around the world. Okay. We are sharing the graph with many organizations worldwide, not just in Europe. OpenAIRE is not limited to Europe, it's a global graph. Okay, so the graph is the world's representation, it's not the European presentation. And it's not just the open access, but it includes everything. Okay. The membership fee, yes. So if you're a member of OpenAIRE, that gives you access to the graph steering part, for example. You can decide with us where the graph is going, what is the vision, so you're part of the community. So the graph, the OpenAIRE Graph is intended to be a public good. So whoever participates to OpenAIRE as a member, of course, has the right to vote, to decide, to do many things, and to decide together if you're doing or not the right thing. You can, more specifically, you can participate as a technical partner, give your contributions, etc. And of course, participate to projects if you, where OpenAIRE is involved, if you have the right resources, the right skills. We always open up every year. We discuss opportunities of participation to projects with all our members. Yes, EOSC has a fee. Again, both fees are very much acceptable for any organization. So the idea is to be part of a discussion, be part of a community, not to let the community pay for the operation of the services. It's a completely different thing. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Paolo. We'll compile your your answer in this document as always, and we'll share these with the recordings and all the materials with all the participants. Thank you. I think we don't have other questions. Oh yes, you included the link to the services for users. Yes. Okay. Oh yes. Thank you very much, Paolo, and thank you all for participating. And on behalf of the OpenAIRE Graph team, I wish you happy holidays. I heard some. Did anyone open the microphone? No? Okay. Well, thank you so much, and I'll see you next year. And Merry Christmas and happy holidays, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you all, also from my side. Thank you. Bye-bye. Happy Christmas.
Bye.
Merry. Ciao.
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 Thank you. Happy holidays. Bye.
Grazie, Stefania.